Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we celebrate the 239th birthday of our Army and recognize the proud traditions of selfless and heroic service the Army has provided to our nation. Special guests at today's ceremony include the Washington Nationals racing presidents. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by Staff Sergeant Pamela Terry and the invocation delivered by Chaplain Major General Donald Rutherford, Chief of Chaplains. Go ahead. The official party includes the Honorable Robert O. Work, Deputy Secretary of Defense, the Honorable John M. McHugh, Secretary of the Army, General Ray Odierno, Chief of Staff of the Army, and Sergeant Major of the Army, Ray Chandler.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Let us all pray together. Lord God of our ancestors, as we reflect on this 239th birthday of the United States Army, we recognize and give thanks for the men and women who have served our Army from the Lexington Green to Gettysburg, from the Marne to Normandy, from Pusan to the Edrang Valley, for all those who have served during our nation's longest war. God of peace, we confess that we are often worried about many things. We ask you for your sustained presence to strengthen us, as you did for our ancestors. Endow our service with constancy and with courage. Awaken us to your presence. May the faith, love, and hope that strengthened our ancestors inspire our service for generations yet to come. This we pray together in your holy name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Ray Odierno.
Good morning. What a great day to celebrate the 239th birthday of the United States Army. As I stand here today and as I think about what this is about, I think about the 187 battle streamers that adorn the Army colors and the sacrifice that so many men gave in order to ensure that this country remains free. The one thing that we all know about the Army is about soldiers. That's who we are. We're about the families that support those soldiers. And I think about the initial soldiers who, even before we were a nation, stood up to establish this great nation of ours, the greatest nation on earth. I think about those who had to hold the nation together during our Civil War. I think about those who answered the call over there in World War I to bring Europe back together. And I was reminded just 2 weeks ago about all of those men and women, the millions of soldiers who sacrificed themselves to change the course of history as they fought in Europe, landed in Normandy, and returned liberty and freedom to many nations, but secured the freedom of this country. I think about those who responded to bring stability on the Korean Peninsula. I think about those who fought with honor in Vietnam. I think about those soldiers and their families who sacrificed so much during these times. But then I bring myself to today. And as I stand here today, I think about the thousands of soldiers right now who are standing point in Afghanistan. I think about soldiers who are in Honduras. I think about soldiers doing humanitarian operations and building capacity in Africa. I think about those soldiers who are currently in Eastern Europe, assuring our allies every single day. 600 airborne soldiers, assuring 4 nations about our commitment. I think about the sacrifice that goes on every day by our families, supporting their loved ones, the men and women who serve this great army of ours, because they believe in liberty and freedom. That's what today is about. It's about celebrating all of those who are willing to raise their right hand and swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States because they believe in this country. It's about all of those soldiers who are the foundation of our joint operations around the world, wherever it might be. It's about the young men and women of today who stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, who understand the importance of competence, commitment, and character. That's what we represent. And because of that, I'm proud to stand here today in front of you in this uniform, having the opportunity to work with 1.1 million soldiers in the active guard and reserve who every day are willing to sacrifice themselves for our nation. And in just a few minutes, we're going to have the opportunity to re-enlist some soldiers who want to continue to serve, who want to continue to be part of our Army family. That's what the 239th birthday represents. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this great day with us as we celebrate who we are, the greatest army in the world. The strength of our nation is our army. The strength of our army is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers are our families, and that's what makes this Army strong. Thank you very much. Happy birthday, U.S. Army.
Thank you, General Odierno. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the Army, the Honorable John M. McHugh.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Army. It's a great day, as the Chief said, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all of you for once again joining with us in a very important celebration. So many assistant secretaries, members of the R staff, command staff, vice chief of staff, soldiers, both those in the back who labor in the halls of this building each and every day to support great soldiers like we have here in the front row who, as the Chief said, are going to continue on their important mission. We're also particularly honored that the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Bob Work, has so graciously taken time out of an incredibly busy schedule to share in this celebration and to impart a few words to us. Ms. Secretary, welcome. We deeply appreciate your being here. It's a long history. History starting in 1775. A point, as we all know and we've heard time and again, is older than the very nation we serve. And today, once again, we celebrate what, as the chief described, is an incredibly rich, incredibly storied history, not just of America's Army, but when you think about that history, it's more importantly about the men and women who proudly have worn the uniform. And while we take time to celebrate this happy occasion and think back and commemorate all the United States Army has done in the 239 years that has so selflessly served, I'd like to, if I might, just remind ourselves of 3 other important Army anniversaries that occur this year as well. It was 200 years ago, this year, that Francis Scott Key wrote the words to what became our America's national anthem, Star-Spangled Banner. As he stood witness to Lieutenant Colonel George Armistead and the United States Army's defense of Baltimore's Fort McHenry against British bombardment in what became known as America's Second War for Independence, the War of 1812, he penned that famous line, "The flag was still there." And it was Army forces that made it so. And 150 years ago this very week, in fact, this past Sunday, when then Secretary of War Edwin Stanton signed an order designating Arlington as this nation's first national cemetery. And ever since that time, under Army stewardship, Arlington National Cemetery has stood as a solemn reminder of the true cost of war and the debt our nation and our people owe to those who for 239 years have donned the uniform of the United States Army. And just 2 weeks ago, the world marked the 70th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, and as the chief mentioned, along with the chief and, of course, President Obama, Secretary of the Navy, my friend Ray Mabus, and thousands other, I was proud to attend the ceremonies in France as the world paused to remember. And as President Obama said during his remarks on that day, we came to Normandy not just to commemorate victory, as proud of that victory as we are. We don't just honor sacrifice, as grateful as the world is. We come to remember why America and its allies gave so much for the survival of liberty at its moment of maximum peril. We come, the president said, to tell the story of the men and women who did it so that it remains seared into the memories of the world. That story that the president spoke about has been written and told time and time again throughout your history, throughout the Army's history, from Concord to Gettysburg, from the Argonne Forest to Pork Chop Hill, from Normandy to Gonjagal, and places and battles both large and small. And throughout that time, through the 239 years, generations of American patriots, those we celebrate this very week during this birthday, have stepped forward in service to this nation, to its people, and perhaps most of all, the principles and ideals when they've said time and time again, "Here I am, send me." A few years ago, we began a new tradition for Army Birthday Week. Each June, we begin our commemorations and celebrations at the home of our Army's first Commander-in-Chief, General George Washington, at Mount Vernon. And during this year's observances, I read a general order that Washington first issued to his troops on the very day that Congress declared our independence from Great Britain. Washington wrote that, quote, "The time is now near at hand which will determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves, whether their houses and farms are to be consigned to a state of wretchedness, are to be pillaged, and from which no human efforts will probably deliver them." The President concluded, "The fate of unborn millions will now depend upon, under God, the courage and the conduct of this army." The courage and conduct of Washington's army made this nation free. And for 239 years, this army, has honored that legacy by defending freedom and keeping peace wherever and whenever the call has been raised. That is a legacy, your legacy, that is embodied both in the memory of all that have worn that proud uniform and throughout our history have served this nation as they do today across the world. So happy birthday, Army. God bless all of you. God bless America, and God bless this glorious Army that keeps us free.
Thank you, Secretary McHugh. Ladies and gentlemen, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Robert O. Work.
Well, Secretary McHugh, thank you. General Odierno, Sergeant Major Chandler, distinguished guests, and members and families of the greatest Army in the world today, and the 13 of you who are going to be enlisted, who represent all of our soldiers and their families, both here and in harm's way around the world. It is such a pleasure for me to be here today as we celebrate your 239th birthday, which, as a Marine, I have to admit you are the oldest branch of the armed services. You know, 2 weeks ago, as the Secretary said, we commemorated the 70th anniversary of D-Day, when American soldiers mind you, not Marines, stormed ashore in the largest amphibious operation in history. As someone who is a proud Marine, let me just say, not bad. That was weeks of really tough, really close quarters combat, and was followed by what in my mind was one of the most brilliant combined arms maneuver operations in history. And that led to the breakout in Normandy beachhead and the dash across France, ultimately ending in Germany. Now, while the Army was storming ashore in Normandy, around the globe, in Saipan, the U.S. Army, alongside U.S. Marines, were fighting on the Japanese handheld island of Saipan. And at the very same time, in the China-Burma-India theater, General Frank Morrell and his famed Marauders were raiding deep behind enemy lines. They marched 750 miles through the sweltering jungles, a little bit more sweltering than today, I might say, and the mountains of Burma. That incredible versatility, fighting on the shores of France, fighting on the islands in the Pacific, fighting in the jungles in Burma, the ability to fight on any terrain, to carry out lightning strikes behind enemy lines, to storm through or maneuver around even the stoutest and strongest of defenses, is a hallmark of this Army. Over the past 12 years, this U.S. Army has followed in the footsteps of all of those soldiers who have come before you and have served our nation so proudly and effectively. You have demonstrated the exact same versatility, the exact same adaptability, the exact same mission-orientedness, getting the job done regardless of circumstances. And it didn't matter whether it was in the deserts of Iraq or the mountains of Afghanistan, the jungles of the Philippines, or the dark alleys of cities in numerous countries around the world. Whenever your nation has called, the Army has answered, and answered brilliantly. You all know we confront the very complex security threats and challenges in our world today, and our nation is going to require an Army that is just as adaptable and just as versatile and just as ready and just as lethal. An army that can go anywhere, that can fight anywhere, that can defeat any and all adversaries, wherever they may be, in any corner of the globe. Secretary Hagel and I are absolutely confident that today's Army, the leadership from Secretary McHugh and General Odierno down to the squad leaders in the squads, now in the combat operations posts throughout Afghanistan and throughout the world today, are going to continue to provide our nation and our citizens with just such a force. What an incredible claim you can make. It truly is an astounding accomplishment. As both the Secretary and the Chief have said, for generations our soldiers have been the strength of our nation. And for generations, American soldiers have demonstrated an unwavering dedication to our country and to all Americans embodied in the Army motto, "This will defend." This is exactly what soldiers have done through this long period of war and throughout history, the 239 years preceding it. You have defended our country's security. You have fought for your brothers in arms and sisters in arms. You've taken the fight to our enemies, wherever they may hide. And along the way, you've added bright chapters to an already illustrious volume of battle honors. The same principles uniting those freezing, ill-clad soldiers at Valley Forge that the Chief talked about, and those who today patrol the mountains of Afghanistan, train foreign armies in Africa, Central and South America, and bolster our allies in Europe and Asia, the principle of duty, honor, and country you live every day. You embody those words. So to all of you dog-faced soldiers out there and to all of those deployed around the world, along with our Army civilians who provide for our security, Secretary Hagel and I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. All of you bear a heavy burden protecting our country, as do your families who support you. But there is no greater public service, in my view, than what each and every one of you do every day. I, like Secretary McHugh and the Chief, would like to thank the families. I was born into a military family. I moved around a lot. I never really had a place to call home. And then I was married and had a family on active duty, and I know how hard it is for a family to stay together, especially in a time trying of war. None of us could do our jobs without you. To all of the families, and I thank you for the love and support you give your soldiers. Now, a wise man once told me, never stand between a soldier and a slice of cake. So happy birthday. Happy 239th birthday to the United States Army, whose fighting spirit, patriotism, and unwavering zeal, I am absolutely confident will last another 239 years. So as a closing, I hope you will allow an old Marine to end by saying, "Hooah!"
Thank you, Mr. Work. Ladies and gentlemen, General Odierno will now re-enlist active duty, National Guard, and Reserve soldiers representing our total Army. Please remain seated for the re-enlistment.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name.
I, Jeremy Phillips,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
that I will obey the orders
that I will obey the orders
of the President of the United States
of the President of the United States
and the orders
and the orders
of the officers appointed over me,
of the officers appointed over me,
according to regulation
according to regulation
and the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
and the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Hooah, congratulations, well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Thank you, General Odierno. And now, soldiers from the Old Guard will recite the Soldier's Creed. Joining us today are the Washington Nationals racing presidents. Please welcome George, Tom, Abe, Teddy, and Bill. The Army birthday cake, commemorating 239 years of service to the nation, is being brought forward. It was prepared by the non-commissioned officers and soldiers assigned to the Army Executive Dining Facility. Private Christopher French, the youngest soldier in the Military District of Washington, and Colonel Arthur Wittich, the oldest soldier in the Military District of Washington, will join the official party for the cake cutting. Ladies and gentlemen, the Sergeant Major of the Army will lead the Happy Birthday song. Ladies and gentlemen, the Army birthday cake commemorating 239 years of service to the nation will now be cut. Thank you, Nationals presidents. It is now time to get ready for the race. Please stand and join in singing the Army song. The words of the Army song are printed on the back of your program.
We're the army and proud of our the Army goes rolling along. Then it's hi, hi, hey, the Army's on its way. Count off the cadence out and strong. For where'er we go, you will always know that the Army goes rolling along.
Thank you. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have some key historical military figures in attendance today, represented by the Washington Nationals racing presidents. General George Washington, the first general of the United States Army and the first president of the United States. Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the United States Declaration of Independence and the third president of the United States. Abraham Lincoln, raised in a log cabin and reared on hard work and dedicated study to become the 16th President of the United States. Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, celebrated for his historic charge up San Juan Hill, being the youngest president and a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And finally, William Taft. Bill is no stranger to the Pentagon since he was a former Secretary of War. He was the first president to throw out a first pitch at a baseball game and allegedly invented the seventh inning stretch. During the Day of Our Forefathers, we're mild-mannered citizens, but when they get the call, your presidents are ready to race. Please look to the right as the Washington Nationals president mascots race to the finish line in front of the stage. Are you ready? On your mark. Get set, go! All five start in a pretty tight pack, but Teddy pulls out to a slight lead. Bill pushes through the pack and gains on Teddy as Teddy and Bill separate themselves from the pack. As they make the turn towards the finish line, Teddy and Bill are pushing each other, fighting for position. George takes home the victory right at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the cake-cutting ceremony. The Department of the Army Welfare Fund, an NFA-funded activity which supports the morale and welfare of Headquarters Department of the Army military and civilian personnel, is responsible for funding today's refreshments. Please join us for an informal reception prepared by the talented non-commissioned officers and soldiers of our very own Army Executive Dining Facility and by Esbarros for preparing the pizza and wings. Thank you, and have a happy birthday, Army.